So the history of the British Empire was entirely, you have to self-source it, right? You have to find out yourself, and because it lasted for so long and there were so many places, you can only ever get some knowledge in a certain space. So I didn't know that about India, but I definitely would like to know more about it. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, congratulations on the win. You know, what was
I got
the prize?
an Easter egg. We all got, well, we got a trophy, which I don't know what we're gonna do. Like have it for 2 months and then take it around to your mate's house and they have it for 2 months. I don't know. And then we hand it back after a year. And we also got an Easter egg, which I thought was an unusual prize, but that's all right.
At least it's something. I mean, you're the reigning champions for a year. Then is that how it works for this quiz?
It does. Will it tell you? Well, I'll tell you our team's name. So
long as it's safe for work, mate. I mean, we're broadcasting, so
artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence. I love it. Yeah, that's great. Adam won a pub quiz yesterday, so you got to say, you know, well done on that. That's not easy to do. UK tradition that is actually being sorely missed, I think, because we've not actually been able to go to pubs since that time. Anyway, we're live, everybody. Welcome to Brainfood Live on Air, bringing it to you every Friday. It's episode 144. I am excited to be bringing this conversation to you, kind of a follow-up to the chat we had last week with regards to, you know, what is the positioning and future of HR in TA. In this context, we're going to talk about, look, does TA and HR kind of lack institutional confidence as a department? Do we lack confidence compared to other functions within a business, compared to sales, compared to marketing, compared to technology these days? And if that's the case, what can we do about it? Because obviously it's going to compromise our ability to perform and deliver to the business if we don't actually truly believe that we're delivering at the same level or more than some of these other departments out there. So it should be one for all of us to have a deep think about. We've got some great panelists to join us for this as well. Anyway, before we kick off, quick sound check. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. A quick one on Crowdcast. If you're on Crowdcast and you can hear me, just give me some notification that the audio and visual is fine. You can do that on the chat there. We should be multicasting this on LinkedIn. So if you can see me on LinkedIn, give me a thumbs up or a comment to say, yes, Hong, I can hear you. Get on with it. And we should also be pumping this out on Facebook in the group, as well as Twitter, my personal Twitter profile. So if you can see or hear me from those places, just give me some sort of indication that we're good or not. I actually don't know whether, I suppose if they can't hear me, they won't actually be able to be able to respond. So if complete silence will probably tell me actually they can't hear. But it looks like everyone can hear in Crowdcast. That's the main deal, which is the most important thing. Okay, good to see Adam Gordon back in the chair. Adam, good to see you. We've already chatted a little bit about you know, your pub quiz. I guess we need to dive into the review of the newsletter. I guess no, we don't. We need to talk about the sponsor, don't we? Christ,
yes, it's a good one too.
They've been sponsoring everything, and to which I'm very thankful for. But I do think this is one of the companies that's going to make a huge difference in the world of work today and tomorrow. This is a company called Oyster HR. Oyster, as I learned from my interview with Tony Jamous, means the oyster in your hand kind of thing. The world is your oyster. And the concept behind this business is quite simple. It's going to take away all the payroll, compliance, taxation headaches of hiring people from anywhere in the world. So, you know, when you're posting a job online and it's like remote global or remote anywhere, you might actually get applicants you might want to hire from different parts of the world. And when you get them through the process, you don't want to end up at the end of the road with a dilemma to say, oh, how do I actually pay this person? Because I don't have a local entity in that particular country. You sign up with something like Oyster HR, and basically that takes that problem away. I'm pretty much certain that this type of company will be a default service provider for any kind of sizable business that recruits at any scale and wants to tap into the global marketplace. So yeah, if you haven't got one of these services sort of on board already, get to it, oysterhr.com. Okay, Adam, let's check the newsletter, I guess. Let's have a look. What did you read last week? And if so, what was interesting, man?
Yeah, I did. So first one I want to point out, I'm big on language and, you know, how to make an impact in your communication with people. And so I was immediately drawn to the article, which was called, I think it's 7 Ways to Make Your LinkedIn in-mails better, something like that.
Yeah. LinkedIn one, yeah.
Tips in here are great. LinkedIn in-mail is typically a very poor method of building relationships with candidates from the experience that I have and the experience I've heard from other people as well. However, the tips in this blog are going to definitely help you get better results, not just on in-mail, but by email and in other instant messaging as well. So some of the tips were things like create a succinct and punchy like subject heading. Absolutely, I agree with that totally. If your subject heading is really boring, then nobody's going to open it. Other things like refer to shared connections you have with that person. Yep, refer to their skills. Give them a little bit of flattery. You know, things like that. Refer to something that you've noticed about them, like, oh, I see you're a West Ham fan. They were lucky not to get Rangers in the next round of the Europa League. You know, those types of things. So, I really good article. Good skills for talent sourcers and recruiters. And it takes about 5 minutes to read it, and you might know it all already, but if you don't, then you'll be better at your job.
Yeah, I think it's worth a reminder anyway, because those are like classic pointers, aren't they? You know, number one, subject line, make sure that's short and snappy and kind of gives you something the candidate can kind of look at. If you've got the name of the person, by the way, stick it in the subject line. That makes a big difference. Obviously, it absolutely does. I mean, if you're going to write this out, then one bit of time it takes you to spend is sticking the name in the subject. That person will know that, because it's actually quite hard to do in a mail merger to stick sort of the name into subject lines, particularly on LinkedIn. I don't think you can do it. So this will tell the person straight away that you've read their profile and you're actually reaching out to them in a personal way. And yeah, talk about them rather than the job. I think the main mistake recruiters do in the first instance is go straight to pitching the job and straight to say, hey, I've got an amazing opportunity with this dynamic company that's going to do all the cliche stuff, etc., etc. Eyes glaze over straight away. Talk about the person. Talk about who this individual is. Have you learned anything about them? Why are you contacting them? Our friend Mark Jubel, yeah, I don't know whether he's watching this at the moment, but he had a really good line, which is like his entire mindset when he writes a message to a candidate is he tells the candidate why he reached out to that person. That's the question he asks himself. Like, why am I reaching out to Adam? Oh, I'm reaching out to Adam because of his background in this, this, and this. That's the reason why and he'll say that. Like literally the second line after hi Adam is, I'm reaching out to you because of your background doing this, this, and this. And straight away that person then feels, okay, he's at least done some research and figured out that maybe there's an interest there, rather than just lamping in a pitch, to say, here, check out the job spec even. I remember receiving messages as lazy as that. Hey, if you're interested in the job spec, respond. And it's like, oh my good Lord. Like, how is that ever going to work? Anyway, really, really good post. I agree with you, Adam. It's for LinkedIn in-mails, but really you could apply it to any messaging first contact that you have when you're recruiting. Okay,
these are life skills as well. This is not just for recruiting. Mm-hmm. You know, these are skills that you can use in any way, whether you're trying to achieve influence with people because you want investors or because you want to generate sales contacts, or you're dating, or there's all sorts of different good skills involved in these.
That's exactly right. Like, make it about the person you're connecting with, not about you. That's ridiculous. By the way, thank you, Stephen O'Donnell, for sharing a link, Easy Mail Merge for Outlook, which it looks like it does allow you to insert merge names into the subject line on Outlook providers. So this looks like a really useful tool to potentially investigate if you're on that email system. Okay, give us another one.
You can probably do it in LinkedIn with some of the automation tools like Autopilot and maybe Duck Soup or things like that. I'm not sure. You might be able to.
Yeah, but LinkedIn basically doesn't like you doing it, and I think these days I'm past
LinkedIn jail.
Yeah, I'm past recommending it, because I think ultimately if I say, hey, do this, a bunch of people do it and they get blasted off. It's like, actually very damaging for their business to do that. I mean, I don't know whether you know, but I know a few people that have been blasted off LinkedIn, and they're in recruiting businesses, and it's devastating. It's not something, it's potentially existentially problematic for your company. So I don't recommend those things anymore. Okay, give us another.
Right. So I enjoyed the article about, like you, I'm interested in like sociology, and I enjoyed the article which was about seven ways in which, I don't know why it was specifically about men, but it said 7 ways in which men are living in the US without working effectively. I mean, it wasn't really, I mean, they in some of them they were working, but let me just read you the list of things. So one was unemployment insurance, which I guess is the equivalent of like the dole in the UK. Another one was a variety of different things bundled together: early retirement, pensions, disability, and lawsuits. Then there was savings, and trading stocks and Bitcoin. Working for cash, as in cash in hand and you're off grid. Living off family members, and then illegal work like drug dealing. And the final one was, which is absolutely is work, is living off the land, as in like being a farmer type of person, and so
even a forager.
It's I mean, quite amazing the amount of different.
I mean, in the States is big enough, and there's if you know how to hunt, you potentially could live off the land. So yeah, it was really strange to see some of those things. Of course, crime is economic activity. It's just not sanctioned by the state. So people can. I would qualify that as work. It's illegal work, but you wonder how many people are forced into crime because they don't have access to the legal economy, so to speak. Bitcoin trading, I think, is massively underrated in terms of the amount of people that are spending time doing it. Not to say that you can kind of be that successful long term, but I think you might earn enough. If you're hedging all the time, you might earn enough just to get by, and that might stop you from getting a low-paid job, because low-paid job is a worse idea. So yeah, there's some really interesting. This article was actually from 2001, so it'd be interesting to see an update from them. But yeah, there's a lot of people basically trying to explain where the missing millions are, because we know there's millions of people that should technically be in the workforce that are not, and then trying to figure out what the heck they're doing. Why they focus on men or not, I don't know. But that was just how the article was written and the demographic they were focusing on.
So when you say it was from 2002, which year was it from? Did you say
it was 2021? So just last year. But September.
I thought you said 2001. I was going to say
no. I might have said that, right? But that's not what I meant. No. Yeah,
right.
So
2021. Yeah.
Okay, one more, man.
Okay. Oh, right. So the article about being a super connector and the benefits of being a super connector. So I have found there's been, probably up until the last couple of years, I've probably have been a super connector. And every time I talk to somebody, I look for ways to help them. And I look for people to connect them with that I think will be able to help them and will be of mutual benefit to that individual. And one of the reasons that I do that is because I'm quite sociable. I like people and I like helping people. And I know that you will get goodwill from those individuals for being useful. So it's, there's a pay it forward kind of element to that. Now, the article was trying to suggest that there's massive career advantages of being a super connector. And I definitely agree with that. However, the skills and kind of natural aptitudes for super connectors means they're almost certainly going to be in what I would determine kind of more right brain type jobs like sales, for example. So I think it's difficult to be a super connector when your main job is working in a laboratory doing incredibly, complex tests that you really need to just focus on. Whereas if you're in meetings talking to people all the time and networking and stuff like that, then, the two things go together better.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's certain professions that lend themselves to being connectors. Of course, recruiting is fundamentally about this. So, anybody listening to this show, really needs to think of themselves as this super connector. And by the way, the nature of this post it wasn't only about connecting people from outside of different businesses, but within businesses. So I think the case that they were thinking of was, okay, when you got a big bureaucracy, it's a huge organization, who do you go to get things done? Or why is it useful to loop this person into an email? Because it will just like massage the thing through, rather than have blockers and what have you. And sometimes these can be people, super connectors can sometimes be doing jobs that are not related to their ability to connect. I remember back in my agency days when I was working reasonably sized corporate business, the most important person I thought in the business was the office manager. She had everybody's ear. She knew everybody. She knew what everyone was doing. She knew who was available, who was under stress, who was happy to help, or whatever. A quick word with her, and that would basically move things forward. And thankfully, I didn't know this, but I ended up being good friends with her prior to understanding how useful she was for my career. And it was like, oh my God, I'm really blessed to have this person as my friend, because I have a word with Jane, and like things happen. And I thought, wow, that was my first experience in the corporate context of a super connector. And I just think, if you're not this person, that's okay. You don't have to be, but it'd be useful to identify who they are, because then if you build relationships with a super connector, have proximity with that person, chances are you're gonna be in a better position to get your stuff done and through what could be a bureaucratic system that is potentially very turgid, very difficult to get things sorted. So yeah, it's a fascinating study. Hopefully we'll learn more about it. I'm going to speak to the guy who wrote it next month, I think, or at least a couple of months. I'm going to Australia in April, by the way. So I'll be in the same time zone, sort of, to the guy who wrote this, which is a friend of mine called Richard Clayton. He's in Hong Kong, so about 3-4 hours away. I'll try and get him on a Brainfood Live. Probably bad timing for you, Adam, but yeah, we'll probably touch on that topic when I'm out over there. Okay, cool. That's about it. Let's talk about this topic. You and I have both not worked in HR. We have worked in recruiting, but probably not as like internally in a big corporate, I don't think. What's your assessment as to the premise, i.e. the premise being TAHR generally lack confidence as a department, and that impacts their ability to get their stuff through a business. And what can we do about it? What do you think of that? Do you think that's true, or what?
Yeah, I mean, it very much links back to the topic we talked about last week, and you pretty much told me to shut up because I was talking about it a bit too much. But I've got a very, very firm belief that there are levels of importance of different professions within specific organizations, and those with the most ability to impact the strategic direction and performance of the business should be given the highest priority. When you put certain teams underneath other teams that are maybe not got the right street cred within the organization because of what they do, I mean, I'm going to be really rude here, but the honest fact is talent acquisition can impact the performance of a business like considerably. Payroll, not quite so much. You're not going to suddenly start thriving because your payroll's better. It's a compliance function. So as a result, where something sits in the organization is very, very important. And a lot of people say it's not, but it really is.
There is a journey, isn't there, with regards to TA in particular, because it emerged as very much like a payroll job. It probably emerged from payroll, as a administrative function. Oh, we need a few more bodies in the business, go and hire them. And now we're starting to understand TA as being a strategically important thing, because the talent you get at the beginning of into your business actually has a determining factor downstream, and that could transform how your business operates. So I think TA and HR are on a journey. The question is, how do we accelerate that journey so that we kind of have this sort of position we need? Anyway, let's bring on some of our guests. We'll have a chat with them, and we'll see what they say. So let's bring on Raj Gill firstly. Raj is on holiday, so I thank her massively for stepping out of her holiday to join us here. Is Juliette there? Oh, there's two Juliettes. I love this situation when there's more than one person, and they've kind of got the same name. So I'm just going to take a chance on the first Juliette on the list and see who that is. I mean, if the wrong Juliette, then that's all good.
Do I have a big delay, by the way?
You look okay to me.
Do I have a big delay on my sound, by the way?
No.
All right. Okay.
No, maybe. There's Raj. How you doing, Raj? Good to see you.
Hi, I'm good. How are you? Good to see you too.
Yeah, very well. Nice to see you. And there's Juliette. I think it's the right Juliette, isn't it?
It is. I had to get out and back in again, so I think there might be a remnant of me somewhere.
All right. There's an echo. There's an echo of Juliette there. That's totally cool. Good to see you. Let's do some intros. Going to bring on Liz Lembke in as well in a sec. But Raj, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Gill. I am the talent acquisition manager at BT. Based in the UK, and I'm responsible for leading the recruitment functions for consumer, our global recruitment, and our enterprise recruitment.
Fantastic.
I guess in terms of my background, I've worked in agency, I've worked in RPO, and also led in-house functions and set teams up from scratch.
Cool. Great to have you on board. Your debut, I believe, on Brainfood Live, Raj. So thanks for joining us. Excited to speak with you. Okay, Juliette, can you introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Juliette Rouquet. I work at Danaher as a diversity inclusion subject matter expert for talent acquisition and a sourcer as well. Background, I started recruiting in an agency, went to RPO and then in-house. So I have over 10 years experience in very complex corporate environments in different countries in Europe.
Cool. Great to have you on board as well. And we have Liz there as well. Liz, how are you? Good to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hey there. I'm excited to be here on the panel. I'm Liz Lembke. I'm the Chief Talent Navigator because that's what we do is we navigate talent. I'm a former talent director where I used to have talent management, TA, learning, workforce planning, and branding under it. So it's that catch-all. I didn't have comp, in which I was happy about. But to your point, Adam, I think that is absolutely what we have to talk about is how are these things valued?
Well, great to see you on the show, Liz. Let's deal with an open question firstly. And the same thing I asked Adam at the beginning, TAHR, I would say maybe on this journey, emerging initially from a pretty administrative function, maybe rightfully fairly low status at that time. And now moving forward to becoming, let's say, a more strategic role. But that journey, I still think, requires us to build confidence to get there. There's elements where we might not believe it, or we still don't feel as if, we would belong in having these strategic conversations. What are your thoughts about this? And if this is the case, how have you tried to handle that? Have you tried to kind of manage this process? Raj, just throw that one over to you to begin with.
Yeah, of course. So I think that talent acquisition and HR professionals both have an importance within the process. I've definitely seen it where it doesn't work and one voice is higher than the other. And then I guess the ideal output towards a strategy kind of falls on its face. So I think both need to work in conjunction with each other, both need to build relationships up, both have a part to play, especially within kind of the bigger picture of the organization and in from a recruitment perspective. So I think here at BT, the stuff that I've been doing quite a lot is how do we work in conjunction with our HR professionals so that we can act as the go-to person or the SME within our field, but from more of a HR lens, we can kind of lean on them for their support and guidance.
What are your thoughts on both of those functions having a lack of confidence? Is that an accurate characterization, Raj, or do you think that's just a bad external PR of it, I guess?
I think there is an element of lack of confidence in certain situations. One that we see quite heavily is challenging managers on unconscious bias around that. So I think maybe we don't feel as confident that we can challenge because it's people's perception as opposed to reality. But I think in other areas, they can be quite confident in terms of we should know how to recruit staff into the market and what's the go-to routes to get the right people into the business.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting case, isn't it? Because there's kind of a service delivery mentality within TA and HR, isn't there? We're business partners. Yeah. We want to partner to the business. Basically, we want to try and help them do their jobs and so on. So we're very much like a service arm to these folks. In fact, we were trained to do that. And maybe we end up, it's difficult for us to, provide leadership at that time when, we've been trained not to do that.
I think it's difficult because when we look at it just as a pure business partnering angle, it then becomes quite difficult for people to say no, because everything is, yes, we will do this and yes, we will support you. But how do we then gain confidence in this is our area of expertise. So we will guide you, but we'll also influence you to how to do things correctly because we know the right way to do that. And I think that's probably where the lack of confidence comes from, because we're so hung up on dealing with the business partnering and making sure that our service levels is exceptional.
Yeah, we're yes people, aren't we? Let's hold that thought on how we deal with it, Raj. Because I think let's go to Juliette with this, and you know, not restricting it to DE&I, but as we've gone to this topic of as an example, is this like something that you think that HR does need to get better at, or TA needs to get better at with regards to the negotiations with, you know, hiring managers? Is that where the critical lack of confidence is?
It's hard for me to give an easy answer to this question, because for me there also can be institutional reasons for that. It also depends on how your TA function was created and why. Because if you have an organization where your TA function was created just to save agency costs, then from the start this is what your structure will like expect from you, right? And you will have even more way to go to gain their trust as a partner. Because I think that's when you are TA internally, like in-house, right? You are able to, like, you know, the company, you know, other teams as well. You know the market, you know the kind of candidates, you know the culture. You also know what the company needs, what the company not has already. You're ready to break in bias and stuff. So yes, there is a lack of confidence for me, definitely, but it's hard to have just one identifier of where it comes from.
You know what? You've already raised something which didn't occur to me, but the origins of TA, like why did that function? Why was the first TA person hired? And if it was a very utilitarian reason, oh, I can't be bothered paying these 20% fees, I just need to make it cheaper, then that starting seed is going to have a struggle, because you're a cost saving. That's the only reason why you're there. Totally.
And
different.
Usually. Yeah. TA, sorry, but it's a cost center. I'm just interrupted because you said cost saving, but we are a cost center on top of that. So usually we don't generate money. So I think these are all justifications that we need to bring before we can even explain that we are actually partners in some organizations. So that's also...
It's actually really interesting. So theoretically, if you went into a company as a candidate, that's one of the questions you should answer. You should ask, like, when did TA happen in the business? Who was the first person hired there? You know, what was the purpose? What do you think, Mr. Manager, is the fundamental purpose of talent acquisition? And if they're saying stuff like, yeah, it's cheaper or whatever, that's good to know, at least, because you know what you're going to have to deal with as you go forward. Okay, Liz, let's throw this question to you. With regards to, so we've learned a little bit about sort of the business partnering as a mentality. We've learned about the origins of TA. What other factors do you think are involved in a institutional lack of confidence?
I think I love the aspect of the institutional lack of confidence of saying, you know, here, where did it come from? So traditionally, comp and bed, it used to be part of like finance, and then they're like, ugh, this is just too much work. HR, you guys need to make sure everything stays quiet, and then and that's your role. And that perhaps is traditionally how people see their role, but it's evolved in terms of learning and development, talent management, all of these other areas as to your career looks good here, and how are we delivering on that promise? But a lot of times to that point, the traditional, well, people need to get paid, payroll, HR is payroll. And that paradigm as to, we're just here to get people their comp. Actually, what we do is something quite different, but they haven't been able to hook in. So how do we hook in as to going away from kind of that servant leadership mentality of we're just service, we're a cost center, to saying, how would the organization run if we weren't here? What would happen here? We wouldn't have great people. We wouldn't have people in the pipeline. We would have that aspect of high turnover rates. So here we're also bringing a voice as to what are the candidates, what are the employees internally, how are they feeling, what can be the creative things that we can do so that fulfillment at work happens. So it's having confidence in the stuff we actually do that has a huge business impact. But because people are looking at it perhaps more traditionally as, okay, well, they just make sure that we get our pay stubs at the end and there could be tech that takes care of that. We have to totally counter that argument that it's a lot more, and that's a good thing.
we should definitely talk about sort of the techniques that we could deploy to kind of improve our confidence. I just want to address Tom Bolt's comment there. I thought a really smart thinking. Again, Raj, just to your point, like the partner idea is great, but partner is like literally, as he said, like a co-pilot, not the driving force. And I thought that's actually really well encapsulated. You know, how many HRBPs or recruitment or talent partners are going in there as the co-pilot? And basically we're leaving the driving to the hiring manager, who's going to instruct us as to what it is that needs to happen. And, you know, maybe we just come up with the work, you know, we just got to deliver against this. So let's tackle this. Is it a name? Does the name change make a difference? I mean, should we agitate for that? Should we try and eliminate partner out of the lexicon of what we do? Would that help? And if that's the case, what do we call ourselves? Thoughts on this, anybody? Open it up.
Well, the immediate thing, I mean, when I saw what Tom wrote there, I immediately went, yeah, absolutely, because words are so important, and how we describe ourselves is about how we position ourselves, and what we evoke is how people will think of us. So even just in the sentence that he's written there, if we called ourselves HR driver or HR or TA driver, now that might not be the right word, but just using his words there, I really like driver better than partner. You know, it might not be the worst word, but sorry, it might not be the best word, but something that evokes that. I'm leading you on this rather than I will co-pilot, as Tom's written.
Why don't we just say like talent lead or something? I mean, although that kind of gives like a sense of seniority to it, doesn't it? Like there might be a lead person in the talent team that is the lead, but maybe we could use the term more broadly as faces to the business and say, look, we're actually leading the talent thing, and this is what we've got to do. Like I say, maybe a lot of people listen to this may think this is cosmetics and what have you, not important, but I think the word, the terminology probably is quite important. Thoughts on this to the panelists? Any word change? Is it relevant? I mean, Raj, I wonder whether your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I'd none of my team are called business partners. So all of their titles are either talent acquisition professionals or talent acquisition specialists.
Specialist is a good one.
Yeah, so we do have kind of specialists which will lead on a particular area of the business. Now, when I first joined BT, one of my biggest bugbears was how can we show that we're adding value as a department or as a talent acquisition function? Because if we're simply just going out and just posting adverts and waiting for our applications to come in and send them over to the managers, what really are we doing to add value? So from the perception out to the business, we're just offering a service. But if we lift and shift that piece of work, we could give that to managers and say, just do that yourself, because there is no value add from a specialist or a lead or a professional. So changing that and then taking them on that journey to say, this is what we're going to do for you, and this is how we're going to support your recruitment, but this is what we need from you from an involvement perspective, changes that perception completely. Yeah,
so this is something. Did you see that change, Raj? Basically, when you joined you did, yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about how you negotiated that change? Because I would say a lot of recruiters would say, yeah, that's amazing, but I'm like uncomfortable with starting on this. Like, how do I start the process?
Yeah, a lot of it was there were relationships broken. So I guess from a business perspective, there was no belief in a talent acquisition department. So then it flips back to, well, let's go to our agencies or our friends down the road who have just set up a recruitment agency and they've said they've got, I don't know, 10,000 people on their books that specialize in cybersecurity or whatever it may be. So I guess first it's building that relationship back up with the business and also building a relationship with our colleagues in HR.
How though? Let me interrupt. How do we build that relationship? So, okay, we've got like a rogue hiring manager, not to say rogue, but they've lost faith in the existing internal resource. They've gone to agencies. That's not. We were all once that agent, right? Yeah. That was fine. So we understand why that was there. So how do we, if you're internal, how do we rebuild that relationship when this person's already demoralized by what they've experienced before?
I think it's proving what we're able to do, and the fact that we have got exactly the same platform that agencies have, if not more, because we're actually speaking from the brand itself and not from a third party. So I think as soon as you start building that trust back up and actually delivering on some, and it may be that they've already gone out to agencies, but this doesn't stop us from recruiting those roles. So if we can provide a short list of candidates, which hopefully is better caliber of candidates than the agencies, or even very similar, then they then start to believe that our recruitment tools and our route to market, we have got similar methods to doing that. And I think alongside it, then build a relationship with your colleagues within HR who are going to support you. Because if I talk about my own experience, I had managers who were running rogue. I had HR business partners which were supporting the managers because they didn't want to. They didn't have a relationship with the talent acquisition team, so that had to be built back up. Everything was separate.
Now I understand why you're so keen to mention HR all the time, Raj, because basically you're saying they were almost in cahoots to sideline.
And it was
TA.
very much. It was TA, it was standalone function. We're not embedded in HR. And I know from talking to some of my HR stakeholders when I first joined BT, it was very much. The conversation was very much, I can't do my own job as a HR professional or a HR manager because all I'm doing is getting involved in escalations of talent acquisition or escalations from recruitment. So how can we join forces to battle that back out to the business?
Yeah, I totally get it. I can see sort of how that can be very challenging politically because you've got basically almost back channels that people are talking through. They're not following process. There's probably long-term relationships that people have been there a long time. They're very used to doing this certain way. Very, very difficult to move it.
I guess if anything, it's probably harder because if they need approval to go to agencies and they go to their HR business partner and they're saying, oh yeah, go ahead and do it. Doesn't matter about talent acquisition or about recruitment. And then we find out last minute.
Yeah, and the building of a relationship, multiple ways to do it. One of the things you've mentioned, Raj, is obviously to demonstrate. So you could just take on a job that's gone outside and try and deliver something against it. I think that's an obvious thing to try and do. Let's talk about some other techniques. Let's sit on this a little bit because both Juliette and Liz have got big corporate experience. And I suspect this type of thing happens more often the bigger the organization will be. So what other techniques can TA or HR, whichever side you're coming from, build in order to kind of increase their ability to influence? Go to you on this, Juliette, first.
I've been lucky enough to start with everything that has to do with lean methodologies very early, even already when I was an intern. So that's quite a long time ago. And I've been lucky enough as well to be in an environment where I was one of the person introducing that to the TA function. And I must admit that when you are in a company that uses this kind of methodologies already in the business, introducing it in the TA function really also somehow makes them realize you use the same tool as them. And it's kind of strengthen. It tends, when it's done right, it tends to strengthen a process. So when you go into your intake meeting, you already know kind of what's going to happen because you own your process. You have your different targets and everything. So you feel more confident and more comfortable from the start because you kind of know where it's going. It's your process. You've been working on that, right? And so you can already feel more in charge. So when you have your intake meeting with the manager, then you kind of guide them along, right? I'm not saying it solves all the problem, but it really shifts the vision of the function as well.
That's a brilliant concept. I want to just sit on it a little bit. Basically, you need to have the same kind of methodology because that tells the business that you're speaking the same language. Oftentimes, don't try and teach them or have them learn HR speak or TA speak or whatever. No one's interested in that. They've got their own departments to worry about. What is the methodology within the business? What is the tooling that they use to get stuff done? If you're able to integrate or even fully adopt that within HR or recruiting, suddenly you're using the same language, the same methodology, the same rhythm. I forget, there's a post actually I featured in Brainfood, reminded me of it. And it was about a CEO who was talking about the rhythm of different departments is different in the sense that the finance department has a rhythm because they're compliance driven. They're typically on this annual cycle. They do things at certain times of the year that's rhythmical. That then triggers what marketing can do because budgets are then created and they have another rhythm, which is contingent upon finance, which where's TA's rhythm? Where's HR's rhythm? Where does that sit? And your ability to kind of understand the rhythm of the business sort of partner that you're trying to service is critically important to establish that credibility. Love that idea, Juliette. I now that I kind of think about it, it's something I adopted myself, but my brain doesn't work anymore, so I can't even remember. The last time I worked in-house is what I did. I kind of used like a software engineering tool to do the ATS at the time, because it was like these guys are not going to learn a new ATS. I've simply got to use the PM tool they're using and just put a bolt on there so they can just stare at the same dashboard and just have some talent stuff in there. So, okay, go to you, Liz, on this. Any ways?
Jira?
At the time, it was something called Reich, but it was like, it's basically a PMing type of tool. It's horrible. No offense to Reich, but it was like really, really difficult for me. But I recognize I had to learn that rather than, oh, here's a flashy new thing that you need to learn, because guess what? They ain't going to learn it. So, okay, Liz, go to you with this.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So I think first off, just kind of building on what you said, Juliette, is like having a process, like being surprised and happy, like, oh, look, there is a process for our HR, because quite often they think it's just like, oh, I send them email and then suddenly you guys do something and then a rec and then I get all of these forms back. So that there's actually a process behind it and that it's lean and that we're looking at how is the value. I think that's huge, and it gives a lot of that aspect of credibility. And this aspect of when you're working in corporate, if you have a process, that's always good. Not that necessarily people use it, but they're happy that you have it. I think one of the things back to how do you get alignment and that people aren't just off doing crazy because they feel like they're not getting serviced. And it's understanding what is our different roles around how are we, do we understand what we're staffing? Do we understand where we're trying to go as a business and what the different types of, it's not everything is a full-time equivalent. And so how do we break up and actually talk to what's the capacity, what's the workforce, and what are the competencies that we need? And how are we actually partnering, to truly use that word, to say, are there different ways to get at that? And when you're in an organization that has the departments of talent acquisition, talent management, and learning and development, suddenly you have different areas where you can tap into the talent in the organization differently than if you're only looking at it as to, I'm sorry, behind Adam, there's all those candidates on the shelf and there's this little funnel and I'll just pick out those candidates when you need them. Of course, everyone's just waiting to work for our organization. And it's breaking some of those paradigms as to, yeah, we need to be creative about how we get talent because everyone's always having the budget and resource questions. So being in HR and being creative as to how can we get that capacity in, and that it may not always be a hire, that it can be a development. These are the things that we do within HR, which give us credence to our role as to how impactful it can be.
I'll tell you what I'm hearing there, a couple of things. First thing is like the transparency of process. Like you got to let people know what you're doing or how it's done, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because they may not know. They as you say, they may just assume some magical stuff happens or some just basic stuff happens. They don't see the work or the effort involved in this. So it's almost like you got to sell the pain a little bit. You got to say, hey, okay, here's the process. Show the working out, not just show the results, because they're none the wiser. It's classic stuff. I wonder whether there's ways in which you can make that very visible, especially with modern technology, where you don't necessarily need to report all the time, but you can just have it in a space where this is happening. And then if you're interested, folks, you can actually investigate what's going on here. Whether it's an open dashboard, whether it's the stats, maybe, the pipeline stats, maybe you publish that somewhere and you update weekly or something so that all managers, employees, whoever it is, can actually look at it and say, oh, we're doing great this week. Or, oh, actually, this is a down week. Why is that? That kind of stuff can really help with building those relationships and, I guess building confidence also, in your own internal way of doing it. Okay, what else?
Getting them involved. Yeah.
Go ahead, Adam.
I was gonna say, can I ask about when we think about how we justify our performance? Now, I don't know how HR does it exactly, but in TA we talk about things like time to hire and cost per hire and all these really tactical metrics that the general manager of that business and the sales director over there and the finance director over there, they don't really care about those. Or the CEO definitely doesn't care about that. The CEO cares about how is your function adding value to our strategy and helping us achieve our company objectives and increase our performance. So what is so vital is that TA works out better standard metrics for demonstrating its value in those areas. And I'd be interested to know what our guests think about that. How could we effectively uplift our position in the organization through that?
Thank you for this question. I think it's a super tough one because in my experience, TA stops when the person is hired. So whatever happens afterwards, whether it's good or bad, is not linked to TA. So this is something for me that, in my experience, again, I can discuss with HR, but not TA, because TA is out of this question. So we are asked to bring something to the business, but once we actually have found someone and this person is hired, then this person does not transit through TA anymore, and TA is already on to a next job. So to be honest...
So my response to that would be 2 completely different TA teams will get given a brief to build a business, and they'll build a completely different business from each other. So one of them will build a higher performing business than the other will. So being able to link the hire and the future success inside the organization, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months down the line, to the job that you did in bringing them in the first place, might be something that could be quite useful. Perhaps. Super
useful. I mean, amazing. And asking my colleagues as well, my co-panelists, I don't know about you, but in my career, I've never seen an HR function that has had real data from both HR and the business in terms of planning for workforce planning for the years to come. So it's also, something like they always want to see what is happening with our talent, but on the other hand, they don't really have planned for talent. So it's hard for us to be able to plan strategy as well. I don't know if you have the same experience, but I think it should also go both ways somehow.
Yeah, so I think ours is similar, but we do look at things like attrition. And our attrition data is quite high at the moment, and I guess it is in most places and most organisations with our current climate at the moment. But for us, it's how do we start thinking more proactive and change our model from a reactive recruitment model to be more proactive and start having a funnel of candidates coming through. So we're going on a journey at the moment that we've opened up some strategic locations where we're moving most of our hiring, and a lot of the stuff that I get back from the business is how do we get future skills ready for the business in these locations. Yeah. I guess that is moving towards a more proactive model and starting having conversations with candidates who are interested in working for an organisation that could be a right cultural fit, but we may not have a role today. That role may be available in 3 months' time, 3 to 6 months' time. So how do we change the mindset to both, I guess, talent acquisitions and the business of changing that to say, well, I've just come across this amazing candidate, which we don't have a role for today, but do we have a plan for this role in the future? And can we have an informal chat with this person?
Yeah, that's really advanced way to interact with candidates, because it's almost like they're pre-candidates, aren't they? Because they're not in a pipeline. They're almost like prospective future employees. But if you don't have that, we know that having a conversation with anybody right now is not necessarily going to translate into a hire 30 days down the line. You need to be having these conversations all the time if you've identified the right sort of traits that you want to bring into the company. So yeah, I think TA probably will need to evolve sort of further down the stream, if you like, closer to the candidate on one side, and then on the other side, they need to also expand scope to connect a bit more with HR and solve some of those data silo problems that we have when we're not necessarily knowing what happens to the hires once we've actually brought them into the team. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. Can I add a couple of things? Because I think that, here, this aspect of the disconnect, particularly within HR, human resources, again, I hate that term. I'm all for us coming up with something, as long as it's not chief happiness officer. But this aspect of how are we measuring that impact of what are we doing? And I am so surprised, Juliette, and I really appreciate this, that, apparently front-loaded long-range plans were not only in the businesses that I was in. So this aspect of what Raj was saying, it's that where are we going with our talent? What are those skills? What are the workforce? And that's why that aspect of how is talent management is not for dinosaurs. There was just an article that came out recently that it is easier for people to get jobs at different companies than have a progression within their own companies. This is horrible. This is like the worst message that we can give, because in terms of time to productivity, et cetera, networks, back to the ONA, those are your connectors. You want people to have great careers in your organization, but if we in TA are constantly ignoring the talents that we have in the organization, we're doing a disservice. So this whole aspect of how do we have disconnected metrics, that's a real problem, because we also are then going for infighting and silo rather than saying, talent looks good here. How are you having impact growing in those relationships? And back to the D&I aspect of work for, dignity at work and respect, and how are we helping you grow? When we're impacting there, that really makes a difference. But it's that confidence to say we have to work together on this rather than infighting between the HR functions, because we were just made up anyway. Back to our conversation, we used to be payroll, then we decided, okay, we need these different functions, and we got segmented, and that has been a disservice. So how do we question ourselves as to what's fit for purpose for delivering what we're trying to deliver?
Let's move on to the next point, because we're running out of time here, folks. In fact, before we actually get on to this next point, which will be the final one, I'm afraid to say, because I realize we've only got 10 minutes left. We've lost Liz. No worries. She'll come back. Now is the time, folks, where we always take a break in the middle of the show, where we share our LinkedIn profiles in the chat stream. Reason why I want to do this is because everyone on this episode is obviously interested in this topic. There's no reason why Brainfood should be the bottleneck for the continuation of this conversation. So if you're interested in having a chat with people that are also keen to learn a little bit more about how TA, whether you as a professional or you as a department, can increase your confidence within the business, now is the time where you can connect with other people that want to do that. So take a moment, get your LinkedIn profile and stick it in the chat stream, and then make sure that you take some time after the show or right now to go ahead and connect with everyone here. That's very interesting. I think we have lost Liz for some reason. That's okay.
Can I just ask, Congress, do you do this because you want to continue to be a super connector, even though you cannot accept any more LinkedIn invitations?
Correct. Because I can, but it's like so fiddly to delete people, and there's no way to search for deletes, right? So you end up making like really biased decisions, which I've realized I had to stop doing. I got rid of all the Collins and all this type of stuff. It's like you only search on first name. How am I meant to get rid of people? You can't. Anyway.
You need a program which goes through all of your LinkedIn timeline and immediately removes people who post things that you think are nonsense.
You know what? A simple solution for LinkedIn would simply to tell us who's the last active person. If there's a lot of accounts that are no longer active for whatever reason, they've left the business, some of them have passed on, all these types of things, you can blast them all off. That should be okay, but there's no way to search for this. So when you've got a large number of connections, it's actually very difficult to reduce without taking, I would say, even prejudicial ways to do it, which I've realized I was doing, and that's why I stopped. So anyway, this is an opportunity for everyone else to connect and get on with it. Okay, let's move it to a personal perspective. So we talk about group wide and all this type of stuff. Last kind of focus is individual building of confidence. You might be the only HR or TA person in your business, or maybe you've entered your team and you realize one of the things holding you back is your lack of confidence. How can you improve your own confidence? Is there a way you can kind of drive this yourself? What are your thoughts? Let's go, Adam, feel free to answer this as well. But let's go with Raj first on this. We'll go around for everyone here.
So I think it's just about putting yourself outside your comfort zone is kind of what I've done, and kind of what is restricting you to challenging people when you know that you are the expert in the field that you serve in, would be my view. I am one of many people within my organisation that specialise within talent acquisition, but I think it's just making sure that everyone's points are heard, everyone's perspectives that are valued, that type of thing, but there's nothing wrong in challenging when you know that you've got the expert knowledge in your field.
And one challenge we have to that, Raj, is that unfortunately every single person at BT thinks that they know talent acquisition because they've been hired at some point or they've been a hiring manager. And so it's just one of those functions, unlike procurement or legal or something like that. Everybody has some experience in recruitment. So unfortunately, we're in the spotlight.
Yeah, and I think the amount of times I've heard, "Oh, recruitment's easy," or anyone can do a recruitment job.
Oh, I know.
Until they actually sit in the seat and understand what is it that we do and how different do we make it and how do we become, I guess, looking at kind of advocacy and that kind of stuff in terms of what we're actually recruiting for. And they actually think, well, where do you start? And you're juggling so much in your organization or in your actual day-to-day role. So I think for me, from my personal view, it's very much kind of stepping outside of my comfort zone and actually linking with people that are in a similar role to me in other organizations, so I can share best practice and learn from my colleagues or my peers in kind of different networking groups.
All right, so you've introduced two really good points there, Raj. Number one, you got to feel the edges of your comfort zone, so you know where that comfort zone is. Guess what? That is a place that you need to push against. Like, don't be satisfied sitting in there. Yes, most of the times you can be in the comfort zone. That's where you are comfortable. That's right. But if you find yourself sitting there all the time by default, you know what? You got to rub against it a little bit and push. That's for your own career benefit, your own personal development. Second thing is that you can also connect with your peer group outside of your company. So make sure you connect to all those wonderful places where you can interact with people. Recruiting Brainfood obviously is there. DBR is there. RO100 is there. Loads of different places where you can go and connect with other recruiters, other HR people. Okay, go to you, Juliette, with this. Give us one tip, personal development, building confidence. What would you suggest?
I know what helped me, because even though I can be very confident, sometimes not, because then you have a VP in the US and you obviously don't want to, them to get mad at you. And when you're 25, it's not always easy, but I know the way I started was holding people accountable. So being clear from the intake as to what are your expectations towards them, making sure you write that per email, because then they must read it, and they have not read it, then it's kind of on them. And make sure that you are clear on your expectation. I expect feedback in 2 working days, and then in 2 working days you chase.
Okay, that's it. That's a really good point. I think you've summarized it perfectly. Basically, set an expectation from the person you're dealing with, no matter the level of seniority. If you're working together, you can set an expectation to say, okay, great, I understand this is happening. If we do this, I need you to do that. And if you kind of just remind yourself on every interaction you have with a hiring manager or anybody in the business, there needs to be some sort of exchange of resources or exchange of behavior, and just remind yourself, like, what am I getting from this person? If you're just saying yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, to whatever exchange, you've probably walked away from that exchange with a diminished status, and therefore it's kind of subliminally diminish your confidence. Like, you don't even know that you've eroded your own confidence by doing that. Liz, let's go to you with this personal tip on how to build confidence for yourself.
I think, for me, the whole aspect of build confidence, build competence is really key. I think getting involved. So one of the companies I worked for, I ran the war room. So here, really getting involved deep into the business so you understand what you're talking about and fall in love with the product because they're in love with it. It's so helpful. Because it gives credence and credibility, and then you can ask those challenging questions, and each time you do, you add value into, we didn't think about it out of that aspect, and you're really becoming that partner rather than the one fiddling with the forms. Yeah,
I totally get it. So in other words, deep dive into what the business is like, and that should be, to be honest with you, I don't think that's an option these days, isn't it? If you're joining a company, you have to be passionately interested in what the thing is about. Otherwise, you're going to really put yourself in a position where your motivation is always going to be challenged by being there. How are you meant to recruit for it? How are you meant to care about this? All of those things you need to somehow muster up in yourself. When in fact, if you kind of have a bit more of a deeper interest in what the thing intrinsically does, you've got a better shot at doing all of those things well. And again, the spin-off of this is that you end up just being more credible because you know about this business. You're not just again, I hate to use the cliche, but you're not just the HR lady, or you're not just the recruiter shark or whatever. You're a business professional in this company in equal standing. Okay, Adam, the final word to you. confidence, man. Like how do you build self-confidence in an area you're not confident in?
Two things. The first is use data, be able to link everything that you're doing as high up the levels of company performance as humanly possible. So if you can show that the impact of your great talent acquisition work has made that sales team higher performing, then nobody's going to argue with what you got to say. So that's data is really, I think, the most important one. But you said something really interesting, Hung, which was around, you know, if we were publishing our dashboards, if we were able to just show, you know, I remember the days of walking around call centers and you can see the call center performance on screens all around the, you know, the site. If people constantly had access to a TA dashboard that shows the strength of the internal and external talent pipelines, then that would be really exciting. So that would be another one. Transparency on your own performance.
I hate reports simply because I think it's just admin. I have a real problem with just doing like reports because it means that I've got to do. This is why I'm always late on taxes and stuff like this. It's like it's not about the money. It's like I just hate doing it. Like, why am I doing this report? You know how much I owe. Just take the damn money. And it's the same way with sort of any kind of activity. If it's already collected because it's in the system, the numbers are there. Find a way to expose it. It means you don't have to do the extra in producing a report, and you can just point people to it. Like, you're never going to get that boss demanding, "Where's that report?" Just say, "Did you not check the dashboard, sir?" You know, that's a really powerful thing to say. So yeah, transparency is a cheat code. Okay, that's it, folks. We're out of time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Raj, especially you, seeing as you on your holiday, you managed to come in and say hello. So really great to see you there. I'll see you at RecFest at the very latest, right? So good to see you there. You have a very good weekend.
You too.
Liz, thanks for dropping in last minute. We were meant to have John Hull with us. He couldn't make it because he had a sore throat. So Liz Lembke managed to drop in at late notice to join. So thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. We'll talk again. Germany, right? Berlin. I'm going to be there in May, I think. So we'll have to make sure we catch up there. Have a good weekend, Liz. And Juliette, great to see you. Great to see you on the show. Thank you so much for your time. And I think you're in Berlin also, aren't you? So
I'm not in Berlin, but I'm in Germany, so more or less. I don't want to disclose my personal location, but I am not far from the French border. But on the German side, because I'm French, so it's just.
But you work basically for the German part of the business, right? Is that right? Or
I work for a whole EMEA actually.
Okay, I understand. No worries. Well, listen, if you're in and around Berlin by any chance in May, I'm going to be there.
It's a long way.
I heard that now.
It's a long way. Germany's a big country. I'm not holding out too much hope. But you have a good weekend, and thank you so much for joining us.
Bye.
What a cool panel. I enjoyed that.
I think Juliette's probably closer to Paris than Berlin.
Yeah. There's probably Strasbourg somewhere, you know, just to really see the border across that. Even Zills lives around those, like very much straddling the two. Yeah. So yeah, nice part of the world. All right, that's about it. I need to catch up with you. Did you see the Khan Brook fight? I mean, I guess your bet didn't work, but it was never going to work. Brook was never going to lose that, was he?
No, it was the least likely. Khan knocking him out was definitely the least likely option, but it was just a lazy. I think I had 10 quid in that account or something like that. I just went
it was worth throwing in there. I mean, I feel sorry for Khan because he basically is past it. And yeah, I mean, he should retire. I think Brook should go as well. To be fair, they're both like two. Brook might have a couple more left in him, but I just wonder.
Well, they're both 35. They're both 35, but Khan seemed a bit like an old 35 and Brook felt like a bit of a younger 35, to be honest. But I mean, they've both had big careers. I think the only difference is, I guess, Khan's a mega multimillionaire. Brook's probably, you know,
he's got
quite a bit further south. Yeah, but not on the same level as Amir Khan. Nowhere close.
That's true. Khan's had an amazing career, and he gets ragged for far too little reason, in my view, because he's been brilliant for the sport, brilliant for British boxing. So yeah,
he's also got loads of career opportunities after this. Whereas I think Kell Brook really is a boxer. Khan is a celebrity. You know?
Yeah, I think you're right. He's gone through a different stratosphere, hasn't he? So maybe Brook needs to have one more dig at it, but yeah, they're both getting on 35. Is probably about right to call it quits.
More importantly, though, the world's greatest boxer is in Glasgow tomorrow night, defending his undisputed super lightweight. What do you call it? Whatever it is. Scotland's own Josh Taylor is fighting against Jack Catterall.
Are you watching it?
His mandatory challenger. Oh yeah, I'll watch it. Yeah, I'll watch it.
Cool. Yeah, boxing. We should do a boxing match, mate. Like organize a recruiters boxing match or something.
I thought you were meaning me against you.
No, there's a weight difference there, mate. I mean, I'm putting on weight,
different category.
Yeah,
you're not going to catch up.
I'm gonna be like flyweight. You're like heavies. So there's like,
So I'd have to fight someone like Jamie Leonard.
Yeah, that's it. Everyone's going to be heavies really in recruiting, but there you go. Dear. Anyway, have a good weekend, man. I'll see you soon. Okay.
All the best. Cheers.